Hey everyone, thank you so much for part two, or really the beginning. So I'm Kusal Matthew of Koos's Key. This has been an amazing journey. Becky and I have done, this is our fifth live together. Today's topic is going to be about false beliefs and just kind of closing that concept between our actions and our thoughts. And then what we're really going to be talking about is really kind of picking up a little bit more of, we went over intuition. We went over, um, oh gosh, what else did we go over?
We went over, like, childhood wounding, we went over, like, the core wounds, because so many of us have those core wounds, and hi, by the way, I'm Becky Lee, welcome back, thanks for joining us the second time. Mercury retrograde strikes again with
Ye-
links and stuff.
Yeah, and so Becky is a community builder. She doesn't like labels, but I'm gonna, put some labels just so that way you can really I'm gonna funnel you to her a little bit, and ultimately, we've both been professionals and this has been passion projects for us. And Becky has some Facebook communities, she does energy work, and so her link is in the bio. I'm Saul Matthew Kusiski. For me, this has been an outlet of wanting to help other people get experience and learn how to take their pain into power and realize that you're not trapped in the pain. You're not trapped in um, the misery. And I felt that the life that I was on, I was living a cursed life. I had a high ACE score, which is a trauma test, and I was like, hey, I don't want to die young. I promised my daughter I would live to 105, and I realized that it can be something for everyone. So this is all about learning how to take facts and information that we've learned, take the wisdom that we've gained from the collective, and then also apply it to yourself and make your own damn decision. Because there's no right path except the right path for you. And I think what Becky and I both talked about in our intuition one is the more you can listen to that calm, that secure voice, you're able to not react or respond. And you're able to really take a lot of control back in your life. And that's really kind of what we're here to talk about.
And that's so true, you worded that so well. It's like our power lies in our responses. I don't wanna say reactions because when we hear the word reaction, we hear, like, that fight or flight, like, reacting back. All our power is in our responses, and some things don't even deserve a response, and when we realize that, and we can, like, come back to center and be like, "Okay, if it's something triggering you, why is it triggering you? Why am I feeling fear in this?" Because honestly, I was thinking this morning about what we should talk about today in this live. You always do such a beautiful job of like creating an outline for us, and then we just like flow through it intuitively, and I love that. But we as children are only born with two fears. Two fears in our lives. It's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else is learned. It's learned through experience, through trauma, through our parents, through the world around us. So when we come back to self and realize that I am, I'm powerful, and it all, everything is up to me and how I perceive the world around me. We can shift our life. Do things that scare you. That's like something that changed my life. Every day, try to do something that scares you.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in danger. I'll put that.
Yeah.
Do something that scares
Yeah.
you.
Don't be an adrenaline seeker where you're just, like riding fast in cars without a seatbelt or anything like that. Don't do that. But Becky's right, and I think it's about embracing the fear. And, and we kind of talked about where the ego is kind of a good thing, but also, it's where from our childhood, it's where, when we never felt safe. And I think that's when we kind of pick up on some of these false beliefs. And and I'm glad that you have a vision, and there's more of a good topic you want to talk about, and embracing the fear and kind of where that fear comes from. And I think that's important because that fear that you pick up at a young age, that's where I think the false beliefs really stem from. And I think we talk about perspective, and we talked about how to take back your power. But how is it that you do when you believe in these false beliefs, like what was like that going for you?
So our mind, I once I did some reading on like psychology and researching like how our nervous system and our mind works, I realized, that our mind is set up to protect us. So those fears are like important. Like our body still thinks we live in the Stone Age. Our body still thinks we are out to like to hunt and to gather because we've lived through so much like stress as humans over the last, 5,000 years in our evolution, and we still have that in our epigenetics. So we are like on high alert. And then you add trauma in this lifetime on top of it, abuse, all those things, just the wars around the world, like media, social media. And social media can be such a tool, but you can also, watching too much news will pour like gasoline on the fire of fears because everything is so like, sensationalized. It's all about earning money, like, for all of these online, like, newscasts, TV newscasts, and I'm
Yeah.
not a conspiracy theorist, I just know my life changed when I stopped worrying about the media, and I started looking within and thinking about what I can change in the world and my world, and it started to change around me. So, what I did is I lived in a place of fear most of my life. Because my mom was very fearful, very anxious, and that's fine, I love my mother,
Mhm.
she was a great mother. She only knew what she learned from her mother, and, it's all passed down, it's generational, and when I realized that I have the power to shift the way I see things and perceive things around me, not everything is a threat to my life, where my body was telling me it was a threat to my life, my
Mhm.
mind was like I was reprogramming and going, this person coming at me is not a threat to my life. This person cutting me off in traffic is not a threat to my life. Public speaking is not a threat to my life. And I
Yeah.
started to work through myself and through my fears in that. And it's like it's reattuning your nervous system and reattuning your mind. It's creating new neural pathways. It all comes back to that.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's reattuning and kind of, seeing our body react and then kind of responding to that reaction and kind of having that
Yeah.
compassion with it, and like, and I'm sorry that, you carried some of that, that fear, because I think you mirrored the love of your life, and you're like, hey, I love my mom, like, like, I'm going to love the same way, because and I was kind of the same way in that aspect where I found, and I love people based on other people's way of loving, and it wasn't always the most authentic to myself, and I think over time, as you said, you were able to kind of see those patterns, because ultimately, like, I don't know about you, I was always afraid of, like, other people and what they were going to do to me. I was, like, just nervous of the outside world, and I think that trauma response, I also heard that, if things are from about 18 months ago, if they're still, like, bothering you, if there's things that are still going on, like, it's still within you. We have to kinda do
Yeah.
some work, and I realized that, like, the false beliefs are, like, for maybe people like you and I, maybe not everyone else on the audience, like, it happened at such a young age. And when you have decades of believing that, and it takes a lot longer to kind of break those ideas and the concepts, and breaking some of those, you know and, and so I know how I kind of worked on and changing that, but, like, what do you have a good example of, like, one situation where you're like, "Hey, like, here's what I'm doing, here's what I feel," and there's such a difference, and your body was kind of fighting, like, itself between the actions and the thoughts?
So I'll give you one. I had a deep lying belief that I was always the troublemaker and I was always in trouble because as a child, that's how I got attention. So I always was I don't want to say manipulative, but I'd always know how to get my way, but maybe not the best way. And I had to overcome that and realize that that wasn't who I was. And I actually wasn't. It was other people on the outside telling me that and teaching me that. So even in my work life for years, I would always get in trouble at work. I would create because we're telepathic beings, right? So I would be like, oh my gosh, my boss hates me. Oh my gosh, I'm going to fail at this project before I even would start. Oh my gosh, I can't do this. And self-fulfilling prophecy. I'd create those circumstances on the outside to mirror that back. And then in the last few years, I started to realize that I am way smarter than I ever gave myself credit for. I look at like my life path and how I've jumped back and forth into different careers just because I got bored of what I was doing. I would be like, I'm
Mhm.
going to try something new. And then I would exceed at it because I would believe I would exceed at it. And then, so I even find myself nowadays going in, even with my own business, it's being like, I can't do this. Like, this is too much for me. I'm not this, I'm not that. And then I'm like, no, I am. I provide amazing service to people. I am, when I speak, also public speaking. I used to get clammed up. I would say things to myself like, I speak eloquently. The answers always come to me when I need them. And it's creating that channel and creating that belief within self.
Yeah.
And I still have moments where I go back and I feel, insecure or like I don't know. But I sit
Yeah.
with myself in that meditative state, or even in moments like before we start this live, we had technical issues. Before, the old me would have been like, oh my gosh, this isn't meant to be. I'm failing at this. And I'm like, "No, go with the flow." It's like, this is life.
Yeah.
Life throws you curveballs. It's about how you react to them. Are you gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so stupid. I messed up. I'm like, not good at this. I can't do this. I'm failing." Or are you gonna see it as like opening a new door? Well, we're gonna create a new link. Maybe we'll attract new people in that'll hear our message. Maybe it'll be shared out in a different way. And
Yeah.
even if I don't believe it when I say it initially, I'll start to believe it, and then I start to manifest that on the outside.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. Like how it was, when you changed the careers and you did a lot of that, like deep down, you knew you could, like, you had that belief. And I think even though when you were younger, I think which you don't normally label, but you labeled yourself as, when you're a kid, kind of manipulative, or you try to get your way. But I think part of that was probably when you had a lot of stuff going on, you just wanted to control the situations to be safe. And I don't think it was manipulating of like telling people how to do stuff, but I
Well,
think,
and it was like wanting my parents' attention the only way I knew how to get
yeah.
it, right?
And
Whether it was positive or negative.
but the hard part is we carry a lot of that guilt for, decades, and you're just beating yourself up. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
And I think, for myself, mine was, I was kind of gifted when I was younger. Like I jokingly, not jokingly, but like I do kind of mean it. Like like I'm a little like, I know I'm a little on the spectrum. Like I have a tough time looking at people's eyes. Like, but I've had to just work through my social anxiety, my communication, because I used to clam up. I used to have a stutter, and sometimes I would get
Oh,
so nervous. Like, like Noah from The Notebook, he had a stammer.
yeah.
I had a stammer. I couldn't, and I
Oh,
ran. So here's the thing: I ran a call center, Becky. But there was times where before, like decades ago, answering the phone, I would freeze. I couldn't say hello, couldn't say fucking hello. And then what I did was I left my credit union job and I got a job in advertising. I had to literally do cold calling, and I forced myself. Like, how am I going to do this? Because it was fight or flight. I had to earn money, and I had to create enough experience to break these beliefs. And even though a part of me was like, "You're weak. You're doing all this. You have anxiety," the other part was like, "Fuck that. I can do this." And I
yeah.
think that's where, those false beliefs are so ingrained in us. And it's like you said, it's running to the fear. And I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of people run to the fear because it's painful. I mean, me having to pick up a phone knowing that I was gonna probably have a panic type attack, and I had to use the fear for my stuff. And it was like, but that's kind of what you were saying earlier, is, even now you have this like anxiety, or you feel nervousness. But I think the difference is, even though it's normal, we have, like, I get nervous sometimes when I drive, but ultimately I don't go to the panic. I don't go to the next stage of like my fight or flight, where I'm like, you know fight, flight, then it goes freeze, fawn. And I feel like when we get to the freeze and the fawn, those escalated fight or flights,
Yeah.
that's when I was like, that's when it got really tough. And that's where I lived most of my life. And I would put myself in these like heightened stages, because that adrenaline, is what I
People
needed
feed
to.
off of it. It
Yeah,
becomes your fuel, and we have to, like, re-regulate our nervous systems to realize we don't need that fuel. That's not the proper fuel because that actually just puts you into adrenal failure living like that constantly because your cortisol levels are constantly spiked, and it's actually really, really hard on your body, especially your cardiovascular system, and even, like, your musculoskeletal system. It's just so much work. Like, I look at my
yeah,
my children when they get angry, especially my little guy, he's so sensitive, and it's like we have to build resilience in these children, not in
yeah,
like a negative way, but them understanding. I see him struggle the way I did as a kid because we pass this on to our children. And he does something, and if it's not perfect the first time, he's like angry at himself. And I'm like, but this is how you learn.
yeah. I think that
Take the failures.
perfectionism, yeah, and and I think there's a lot of pressure, and I think another thing that you mentioned, I don't know if it was when we were prepping in the first live version or this one, but I think there's so much stimulation and there's so much stuff in the world, and I think another thing too is when there's so we're talking about cognitive, like a false belief is like kind of the actions in which you're living and then the thoughts that you have. The more cognitive dissonance or the bigger that there is a difference, the more that internal pain can
Yes.
be, it's gonna feel more intense. And and I think one thing that what we're really trying to share for you all watching now or later on is realistically, once you can hear the pain and not numb, because I used to use TV, sometimes food, or I would just scrolling on the phones, always using, or sometimes it was alcohol or marijuana, like you're using other substances to not want to feel that intensity, is
Yeah.
because I just couldn't deal with you know either letting go of the old belief, or it was I just wasn't quite ready to let go of the adrenaline because I needed the adrenaline to live, and that's
Yeah.
the other hard part.
Yeah, and like thank you for sharing that. That's super vulnerable. And but I love that because as we share our experiences, and I'd like anybody watching or listening to this after the fact or live, comment below a fear that you've overcome that you faced head on. It's all about bridging that gap because when there's a gap between two extremes that we think are extremes, we resist them. We resist change as humans. That is our human nature. The most successful people, they've trained themselves to run straight for the change and run and go with the flow. Our bodies, our nervous systems want to feel safe. And whatever that is, whether it's chaos or calm, we want to stay in that known position. We want to stay in that. And yeah, I love that running towards the fear. It's so imperative to like not there's times where you're not going to run towards the fear when there's an actual threat at hand. You're not going to run into a fire, but people, you hear these stories of people going in and saving people because that
Mhm.
adrenaline's going. But when you have a fear, like a fear of, oh, I don't know, a fear of success. So many people have a fear of succeeding. Like
Yeah,
that was a big one I had to overcome because I would set myself up for failure by it's almost like it's
yeah,
like waiting or something good would happen
the
and you wait for the other
self-sabotage.
you do, and you wait for the other shoe to drop, and then you create that self-fulfilling prophecy too. Oh, I hear this all the time with people that I work with. Oh my gosh, things are going really well. I'm waiting for them to like fall off. And it's like, why are you waiting? Because you're going to create that. Feel into it. And I'd love the audience to comment something that they overcame in their lifetime, just even baby steps of overcoming, whether it's somebody who's afraid of heights, maybe going out, somebody who's afraid of going out alone, taking themselves on a date alone, the fear of judgment of
Yeah.
others.
That's funny you mentioned, and please put in your comments, the people definitely watching now, because we love interacting with you all, and that's really been where a lot of our magic has been in the past, and unfortunately we lost some of our loyal participants when we switched to the new link, but anyways, I think when I moved down from Michigan down to here in Florida, one thing is I tried to prepare myself. Like I was like, hey, I'm leaving a huge village of community, friends, and so I literally would go to the movies by myself. I would go out to a restaurant even before I moved because I was like, if I can do it here, then when I move down, it's just going to be like m- the intensity of my stress is going to be like I'm desensitizing. So that's kind of what. So
Yeah.
if you anyone who's gone through trauma, once you go to therapy and you go working with someone, that's essentially what they're gonna try to desensitize your automatic stress responses and slowly get it out until the poison and the old pain is gone. But realistically, what we have done to be successful in life, I think we've used that same aspect to succeed as well. Like I've
Yeah.
desensitized myself. I knew the battles and I knew the fear of achieving my dreams, and then I would go at them. But the problem, kind of like what Becky said, is when she was kind of close to achieving her dreams or getting close, there was a part of her that would self sabotage, or she felt, you know, like like she wouldn't do the things that would take her to the next level. For me, I would not believe that I was ready for the next level. I was like,
Yeah.
I need to do this, then this, then this, then this. If I didn't follow that path, that's when a lot of my own, you know,
That's
self-limiting
self-saw
beliefs came up.
and that is that self-sabotaging as well because we're so like our logical mind wants steps, but we have to understand it's like the world, yes, in maybe big industry or like, government bureaucracy or big, entity bureaucracy, there's logical steps to get there. But when you're building, like when you're an entrepreneur or you're creating something, you need to be able to like be flexible. It's like if you think the next step's this, but the world or like your intuition or the guides, whatever, are showing you this, sometimes you need to just go with that if it feels
Yeah,
right, if it feels like it's from your heart. We get so stuck in this society, and I call that dogma. It's the dogma. It's letting go of that dogma and those limiting beliefs.
yeah, and in business, it's pivoting. It's because you're just like, I can't continue to invest my resources because it is not efficient and it's a waste of human capital, physical capital, or resources. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like, what can I and that's something that we talk about in business. It's failing fast. It's and there's a whole loop in business. It's taking action. It's the failure or the success, learning the lessons, um pivoting and applying it, and then it's redoing it. And the innovation cycle, the more you can do it, the faster, the more efficient you're able to create this feedback loop of experience and knowledge and wisdom that you
yeah,
can to your point, there's big conglomerates, there's all these other things, but they're stuck in their ways. So if you're able to pivot, if you're able to be a nimble person with your intuition and take those actions opposed to letting those self beliefs define you,
yeah,
that's when you're able to create experiences, you're able to manifest, and you're able to take more ownership of your life. And I think we are all so capable of whatever greatness we want. But if you don't take the actions and you go back to your old habits, you're like, all right, I got there. I'm pretty close. I'm going to take this next month off.
yeah.
Well, then you might not ever get back to it.
Well,
Right.
there's keys there, right? Like there's momentum. When you build momentum, keep going with it. And a really logical explanation of this is called reality transurfing. I can't remember the guy who wrote the book, Vidal something. He worked with Steve Jobs and really big entrepreneurs, and it was about changing your concept of reality. It's like these big, expansive thinkers. They don't get caught in their fears. They have fears, but they believe in their dream. And you brought up manifesting. Manifesting is focusing your attention on where you want to be, not your mistakes, not your past, not what you should be doing. It's where you want to be, and then becoming the version of yourself that is creating that. So, we look at fears. So, old me would have been, something's too hard. I'm like, I'm not doing this. It's too hard because it's my fear of failure coming in or
Mhm.
fear of success. If you look at that, my body was like, no, every time I put my energy and my heart in, I fail because in the past I had. And I didn't take that as a pivot point, like you spoke about. And
Mhm.
now when something doesn't go to plan, I pivot. Like I honestly am already thinking of the next way to do it. I like have the next best logical step and I'm like, okay, we're going to take this as a lesson and this didn't work, but it's a freaking awesome lesson and I'm
Yeah.
going to pivot and create something new. And this is what we call wu wei and flow, the flow state. It's like you're listening to this and you're focusing. And our world, our media especially wants us to focus on the negatives, how we're failures, how we're victims of society, how we're victims of our parents, like honestly this whole new movement in North America is victim movement. And I don't want my kids to be victims of their circumstances. Like I haven't been a perfect parent, but I tell them that and I'm like, how can we grow together and stronger as a team? Like I've made mistakes and
Yeah,
I
we
will
all make flaws.
I'll be the first one to admit it to them. I'm like, "Man, how can I be a better support for you? I want you to do this." And, I don't want you to be a victim of your existence. Poor me. Poor me does
Yeah.
nothing for us, and that's what the fear wants us to do. Come down into that and be like, "I can't do this. Stop that." This is my mom voice. Stop that now and like choose something that you can do and that excites you and go there.
Yeah, and I that's super important. I think the flow state. You talked about that, and I think for people, when the thoughts that you have and the actions that you're carrying, and you carry some of the pain, and you're not believing, and I think what Becky said is when she started pivoting, or she started changing her false beliefs. One thing she had to also, it's almost, and it's funny because she said it, because I'm the same way, is a part of you have this undeniable like faith that you can do it, and that's the self-efficacy and the belief, and then the other part of you is where the false beliefs comes in, and that's where I would say the inner child wounds and the ego, the survival aspect is still running, and it's not letting the logical, the executive function execute, because it's saying, hey, no, like, I get what you're saying, but we're in survival mode. It's going to limit the scope, and it's going to limit a lot of our our actions. So
Yeah.
the goal will be to kind of like, one, see the pattern. And let's be honest, if you most of us knew the pattern without us even like having to come to one of these type moments. So it's kind of like look in the mirror and saying, hey, what can I change? And just start small. And I think having to, like what you said with your children, I think that's important, Becky. Like for our kids, they need to have one faith that they can do it, but also we all need to achieve something. We can't just like go at life and like, to your point, the victim mindhood, the mentality that,
Yeah.
where it's kind of like, oh, something happened to me, I can't do it. You become meek, and you let this experience, that one event define you.
And
And
then
I
you start
think
blaming everybody around you, and it's like that doesn't that disempowers you.
it really does. And I think, one thing for me in this journey is I used to let a lot of other people's beliefs and expectations or their words define the path that I was on. And you've said it enough, where, every day I try to do something. You run towards a fear. I try to create the momentum and keep it going. And for me, the more I do this, my momentum builds. And I have to make a choice of like, what am I letting go of my past life? So
Oh,
that way I can embrace who I am right now. So when I went back to school many, many years ago, I cut TV out for 2 years. Now I'm
awesome.
learning how to not overeat. I'm smoking less, and I'm making the lifestyle changes because it aligns with who I am.
Yeah.
But if I didn't try and I didn't feel the momentum, I would never be here. I would still be almost 20 pounds heavier. I would be having panic attacks. I would be having unhealthy relationships, letting love and this pursuit of being loved define who I am.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing any of that. And
Oh.
and I'm not doing that is because I just started listening to my intuition.
That's amazing, and that's powerful. This is part of the key, and this is where it's cool that we work together in this way. It's like for those of you who don't know me, I'm a scientist by trade. Like I'm a chemical engineer. So it's like the science perspective. I had like this super logical perspective my whole life, but I always knew there was something bigger. I always was like obsessed with the stars and the moon. And, I started to really dig into it. And I had some major changes happen in my life. And I just dug into spirituality, but in a non dogmatic form. And because I always found the walls of dogma didn't work for me, I felt choked because it's like there's a bigger perspective out there. How is there one or two books out there that lead us to this final destination? We are these energy beings. I don't even want to use this word spiritual. We are the same dust as the stars out there. And when we realize that potential lies within us to create universes, because we have like the energy within us has created universes, we start to realize how expansive we are. And you touched on it. It's like we are here to achieve, and not achieve in a way that's like exhausting. We're here to expand. Like stars, we're here to constantly expand, and when we stop expanding we die.
Yeah,
So why not take this life that we have here on the earth plane and create with it? It doesn't have to be something big that you monetize. It can be something as beautiful as serving others or painting or something that makes you happy, gardening. And
yeah,
then, if it makes you happy, do big things. Like we're all different. And like Kusal and I talked about earlier, we before we came live, it's like this competition. We live in a world of competitiveness. And so people will see, you know, us we get jealous of those around us. And we don't when I started changing that, because I'd noticed myself being like, oh well, that person did that. How did they do that? And now I'm like, no, I can do that too. And as I do it, I want to bring those around me up with me because there's so much abundance in this universe.
yeah.
So many of us fear not having enough. And when we realize and we shift our mindset into having enough and knowing we're always taken care of because we do the work to do it and we can create big things, we start to see those realities come towards us.
100%. There is so much abundance in this world. And I think it's been hurtful to me, or it was hurtful, because as I even went on my healing journey and even building this channel and putting out myself, like the amount of like negative feedback, the weird envy, like the malice that I received hurt because it came from a lot of the people that I never imagined it would come from. But then, I've seen all these memes, I've seen all this stuff where it says the people who are meant to come will start coming in. But as I started, that path, and kind of being less logical and just being more present and just, like just letting the flow work, like not living in the past and being like figuring out where the pain came from, because that's where a lot of our depression and anger and a lot of that comes from, because we're stuck in the past. We can't control our future. Anxiety and all the other shutting down is all about fear based about the future, and when you're not in the flow, you're not in the present. And I think the more I was able to just realize that I'm giving my power to this person or that person, or this past or this future, it, it it started just, it was like this, the glass just shattering. And I think, for people, that's when you're able to then start feeling your own energy, and then you can start feeling in your body, where am I holding in my fear, where am I holding in the trauma, where am I holding in that, then you can start really letting that stuff go. But ultimately, if you're stuck in the comfort, and these things that we keep telling ourselves that are just hurting ourselves, because ultimately we know it. Let's be
We
honest. We
do.
don't talk about it to anyone else, but we know it. I've seen so many people who are on like healthy diets, they exercise, but you always wonder, why are they kind of always a little bit overweight? And because this used to be me, is at nighttime, because I wasn't getting the right sleep, I wasn't doing the right things, I would binge eat all my calories, and then at nighttime I would sleep and carry the fat with me. But ultimately, it was because I was dysregulated, and I couldn't own up to the fact that I was dysregulated.
And that's thank you for sharing that. Like that's powerful. So many people don't realize it. Like eating, binge eating, especially sugars, it's the same as drinking. Like it's a dopamine drip. TV is. Like, so many people don't, and, I see a lot of people around me that are in that, and it's not my place to tell them this because they are aware on some level. It's like those people who, you see a lot of people who are very, very healthy on the outside, but they end up with some horrible incurable disease, and they end up dying because they're holding the trauma within their system that's actually creating more acidity in their system because our emotions, our
Yeah.
fears change our epigenetics. They change the way the pH of our body runs because we hold on to that. I had a really cool experience about 4 or 5 years ago. I was having real issues with my cognitive ability at work, my relationships, just my life, and I ended up going to an acupuncturist who was also a spiritual healer. Just a really weird way I met him because I was going to Reiki because I wanted to try to explain to myself, how does
Yeah.
somebody not touching you actually, like, how do you have these experiences? Because my logical mind was like, "This is weird," but I'm a researcher, so it's like I wanna figure things out.
Yeah.
So I went to acupuncture, and I had what I would describe as an exorcism, but it wasn't like negative entities. My body, it was like my 2nd or 3rd session with this amazing human who he was like, "Hey, we're gonna work on your back today." So I laid down and he's like, "This is really weird because I've never, like, through my studies, this is not the way you'd put the needles in," but he like channels when he does it. So he's like putting the needles in a weird way and then he touched the muscle on the base of my spine. And
Mhm.
the only way I can describe it was like excruciating pain. It was like when you have a Charlie horse that sort of moves through your muscle.
Yeah.
I felt this and it ran up the side of my spine up to my neck, and then it moved down, and then my body started convulsing. And
Oh,
my logical mind is like, "What is going on?" And then I started crying, and it was like my body was trying to vomit, but nothing was coming out. And what he said, because I'm like, "What is going on? Like, I'm trying to stop this and it's happening." And he's like, "This is all trapped emotion within your nervous system and your muscles. This
yeah.
is what happens when you swallow your emotion and you hold it in." And I was like, it went on for an hour and a half. Like, it was
But
crazy.
and that ties into kind of what we talked about in our last live, the inner child wound. Remember
Yeah.
the release of the inner child wound? It sounds like that, but it's isn't that wild? Like, I bet in that moment you're just like you're feeling a sense of relief and bliss and fear, but if you if you held on to that even more, because some people might get so afraid of that release, they
Yes.
end up just moving into another section, right? I mean,
Well, we do. We bury it down. I was having issues with my intestines, but it's because I was swallowing. I never cried as a kid. I kept it all in, and my heart center was so closed. And I was so exhausted when it was over because it was like the biggest workout I'd ever had because all this
yeah,
energy releasing from my nervous system. It was like somatic healing, is the only way I can explain it. Um, and I remember walking out of there and it was like a veil had been lifted from my eyes. I saw through dimensions. It was like really weird. And my logical science mind's like, what is going on here? And that's when I really dug into the spiritual side of things, not just the psychological side of things. Cause I'm like,
yeah.
there's something bigger here. Like this is
Yeah. No, I mean, I truly believe that we have like three brains, because we have the one in our stomach, we have the one in our
yeah.
brain, and we have the one in our heart. And I think with that, there's three pumps in each one. There's one in our stomachs, in our hearts, and our brains, and just moving it. So these six different parts of us, one thinking, one moving, is constantly working together. And I think, when we've carried that pain in our life for so long, like Becky, it's tough. And I think a lot of people, you said something about we become victim mentalities, and or at least in America, but another thing that we do is we have also become delusional, I mean, in a sense of like, if there's
I'm not
pain,
laughing.
they say pain is normal. Like, that is a fucking thing that we're brought up saying. Pain is not normal. Like,
No.
what we take with like some of the painkillers. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. My mom called. I had to. I think they're driving. Anyways, one thing I was saying is, painkillers are sometimes, it is an overstimulation of pain, and it is essentially like turning off our pain receptors because we're getting micro pain throughout our body. So essentially,
Yeah.
we don't feel the rest of the pain because we have a tiny capsule of tiny pain that just numbs our entire pain system. So we don't feel the pain in our shoulder. And then we carry it on for weeks, months, years, just taking more pills instead of
Yeah.
actually just healing. So that,
We Band-Aid. We're a Band-Aid society, and this is where we need to come back to the root. Like, you talked about the 3 brains, and they're all connected by what's called our vagus nerve. And if anybody's looking into understanding, like, their body better, study the vagus nerve and that whole psychosomatic system within our body. That's how the reason we feel like we're punched in the gut or we have intuitive feelings in our gut is because there's a huge nerve cluster that actually ends in our gut from our vagus nerve. It's all like Kundalini awakening. It's all connected to that. It's our pranic tube, and it's our bodies are so tuned in, but we're so
yeah.
desensitized from it.
The
This is why.
desensitization. Yeah, and I think once we can start desensitizing and feeling, and that's when we can start seeing where the false beliefs come from. And I think that's
Yes.
when then we start taking action. But to your point, you said you had stomach issues, but like I look at autoimmune issues,
Yeah.
Crohn's, lupus, and realistically, I had my infertility. I think a lot of that was one, chronic inflammation, it was chronic just stress, and then not getting the proper rest and the proper, macronutrients, and then it just starts a dysregulation that goes
Yeah.
across the board. But as you start doing one thing, then another thing happens and another thing happens, and that's where I think, as we talked about our children and the life path and kind of what we want for them, because we're all born sometimes with the epigenetics or the traumas or the history, the lineage within us. We talked
Mhm.
about that in another live. Like you're you're an egg in your mom's body before she's born from her mom. Like, and we have a
Exactly.
lot of that stuff. So how do we, as we let that go, how do we, create and believe positivity by taking action, finding purpose, and believing that inner voice? And for you all kind of, watching kind of later on, I want you to ask, like, what makes you have your heart sing? What gives you that undeniable amount of calm when the storms and everything is rough? What grounds you to allow you to find your passion? I know what it was for me, but you need to find out for yourselves. Becky, like
Yeah.
you probably had that moment where you're just like, I'm doing this, but once I do this, it's gonna start working. And then like, yeah, like what was
It's
like
powerful, and it's like I didn't know myself. I was so disconnected from myself. And then I realized your soul takes you to what you want. I was always so passionate about music and I never understood why. And part of me always wanted to speak in front of people and I was so shy as a kid. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna just start playing music. And you know what? I've probably told this story on here. So I've always played guitar and piano. I'm very musical. Not like technically trained. Like I took lessons when I was a kid, and I'm no amazing musician by any means, but I just like all this stuff started happening in my life where I'd be around the music scene in the city I live in and COVID happened and I'm like I missed going to live shows and I'm like I'm going to start a band. I'm like, I don't know what the frick I'm doing, but I'm gonna start a band. I don't even know how to plug my electric guitar into the amp and like have the pedals but I play acoustic. And it just sort of happened. I found these amazing musicians to play with. And I was like, I'm gonna play shows. I'm gonna be on
yeah,
stage. I didn't even know how to hook my equipment up on stage. But all of a sudden, like within, I met this one guy that lived close to me and he was like my drummer. And then he's like, no, I'm gonna be your bass player and singer. And then we had another drummer come in and within 6 months, we had, like, 6 songs written, and we started playing shows. And I was like,
that's
"Holy crap." Like, this
wild.
is how fast once you start taking the things that come to you and working with them, it's like, "Holy crap, I'm doing this." And then it's like within the year that we played all the venues that I'd set in my head that I wanted to play in town, like the bigger ones. And I was like, "Wow, like, this is how it works, belief in self."
Yeah,
And
and
the next time you're fearful, sorry to cut you off,
no, go
ask
ahead.
yourself, the acronym of fear is so great. I was thinking about this morning. So fear is false evidence appearing real. Ask yourself, is this
Wow.
real or is this not? It's appearing real. Something in your mind's like trying to like scare you and be like, is this real or is it not? If I can sing in front of people on a stage and play guitar, anybody can do anything they want to do.
False evidence appears real. I love that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm gonna tie back a lot of kind of some of the stuff you've said and tie it back because you said when you believe and you start taking action, one thing we both said is the universe is gonna take care of you and you're gonna find the power within you. But let's talk about kind of what you did. You were in a place that wasn't great and you're like, I'm gonna live my life. And you automatically did things that regulated you. Because here's one thing I've learned. Music, the different frequencies of the notes are the different hertz that
Yeah.
aligns our different seven chakras. So you went right to music that automatically helped you kind of find a sense of regulation and then it activated different chakras within you. And then another thing is, one thing I do is when I meditate, I do the different ohms with like the quiet, the ohms, the ra om, la
Yeah.
om, ga om. So again, I use a lot of like deep, like
Yeah.
throat vibrations and along with my speaking. But the thing is, speaking and the breathing, that also helps activate your vagus nerve. So
It does.
ultimately, your mind was like, I'm in a shitty place. Here's some aspirations, but the shit that it pulled you to were the
Yeah.
things that regulated you. Like that's the universe really just pulling out these weird coincidences that brought out the best of you, that healed you from within.
Yeah, exactly. And that's powerful. It's like even those intuitive moments where you want to go outside and walk barefoot. It's the universe telling you you need to go clear your body. There's something in it that needs to be pulled out because that's what walking barefoot can do for you. You want to be in nature. You want to be in water. It's all cleansing. Your soul, your nervous system is guiding you. We live in a concrete jungle most of the time with rubber soles on our shoes. We're not around good frequencies. We're around discordant energies. It's about finding the order in the chaos around us and what can we control? Like knowing that we can control our within and
Yeah.
then that'll change the without, like the outside of us. That's when we truly step into our power.
Yeah, 100%. And that's powerful. I mean, I think once we can embrace the unknown, and
It
it's
is.
tough, it's scary. And I think the hardest part is when you're so used to what like every day, you kind of like you go into this living mindset and then you kind of create within it and you stay in it and you just don't kind of turn off in a sense because once you do you kind of if you feel like you're regressing, even though you're not. And that's where I need to learn how to find the balance because I
Yeah.
think, you know, the balance is hard part of it. You're not always meant to grind. You're not always meant to stay
No.
on. And that's another hard part of what society has taught us. One, it's easy to be a victim. Two, pain is unnatural. Perfection is normal. That's the other thing they teach us. And then the other thing
Oh, yeah.
is everything is a constant. Nothing is constant. Everything is a cycle.
No. Look at our cycles of growth. Like, I live in Canada. Like, the cycles of growth and, like, rebirth and death are huge here because we have the seasons that are so drastic. And, you say it's like that constant. Look at a seed. I always like when I feel that way, I look at the seeds that I plant in the spring in my garden. I'm not digging them up every day to look at them and check at them. They go through such destruction to grow. Like a seed
Mhm.
has to open and destroy itself to grow and germinate something new and create fruit.
Yeah, it's tough. I feel like it's just tough, Becky. Like I feel like sometimes when we were in it, and that's where I think for everyone else, as you start taking action, what that's going to do is that's going to start aligning the difference between your thoughts and yourself, and then you're able to, find the faith. And that's the difference between I think Becky and I think some other people that we met throughout society is even though we had this hard trauma and we were, as Becky called it, we were alchemists. We were able to turn our power into pain. You know, everyone else can be like that, but we had to realize that it was a possibility. And even though a part of us didn't believe it, the other part of us did. And I hope the people watching is you believe in your universe within you. You believe
Yes.
in the fact that we're all demigods in our own way. We're all, the children of gods. We're all the children of the universe, and we, no matter, I'm Buddhist. So no matter if you believe in Hindu gods, Muslim gods, Christian gods, or, other pagan or other gods, ultimately we all believe in a higher power. We are spiritual beings. And I think the more that you shut off the spirit, you shut off that feeling with the oneness and the intuition, that's what's gonna trap you either in your ego or in your like logical hell.
Yeah.
And go
And
ahead.
that's a great way to put it. It's powerful. And once we realize that nobody's coming to save us, there actually is no God outside of us. That God is a belief system created by humans through beautiful, like, this is my belief in it. These ascended masters walked the earth, these powerful beings, and they were teaching us that it's all within us. And as we connect to the higher realms, it's all within us. All the teachings fundamentally go back to the same source.
The
And I know some people might be triggered by that, but as you research and you really learn yourself, and it's all within us. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody. You have to make the choices to save yourself and create the tools within yourself to walk life. And you know what? Instead of saying it's hard or it's difficult or I can't, start saying I can, and it's beautiful and I'm powerful and I'm doing it.
Yeah, and that godly energy that's, within all of us, and and with the masters in which that you are aligned with,
Yeah.
ultimately, using that energy, using that, the authentic teachings, everything in the Quran, the Bible, even
Yeah.
in a lot of the Buddhist teachings, that's been now written, but ultimately it talked about learning how we had action, and learning
Yes.
experiences, and we've lost a lot of, in touch with a lot of that as we've kind of become a lot more isolated. We've lost our village. And I think, as you go on this journey for yourselves, I think building our village has been important.
It is.
And ultimately taking action. So for you all, I want you to meditate on, what makes you excited? What gives you the power to just know that you can endure? And those are the things that you should run towards. What are the things that you still have faith in you that I wish one day I will do this? Just start doing it now.
Do
And
it
I think
now. Don't put it off. I love that. Do it now. Do it now.
do it now. So, but yeah, Becky, I know, we started off with a little technical issues. We've been able to really kind of talk about, I feel like this was a really good encompassing of all the last, like 4 that we went through to kind of turn the positivity of like and taking action
Yeah.
and really kind of cultivating our intuition. So is there anything else that you feel like you want to share from your journey or leave for other people to think about?
No, I just want to thank everybody who's tuned in and thank you for being patient with us through our wave of technology issue this morning. And feel free to share this out with anybody that you feel needs this. That's what we're here to do, is to assist people with their journey. That's our calling, is to assist people with their journeys. Check out Kuzel's email or his you have a Facebook page, so same
Yeah,
name as your YouTube. Check out his YouTube Facebook page. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. It's awesome. Check
appreciate
out all
that.
his videos. And you know what? We'll see everybody next time. I'm not sure what our topic's going to be in a few weeks, but we're going to talk again and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think in the new year we definitely have one. I think we're gonna aim for like this another Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're gonna I think we've really done a good job of covering a lot of the topics. I think now we have some ideas, but I think it's really we want to make sure that it's about helping others with becoming better alchemists in their own ways,
Yeah.
powering up, leveling up. And I think the more that we let the past define us, the more that we're going to stay in that victim mentality that we talked about. And I think now it's at the point now where once you know your past, once you know what happened, you know why it happened, you know how you can change it, then it's more about just taking action. And then it's about building and staying in a state of creation. And what does
Yes.
creation look like for you? Because my creation and Becky's creation are completely different.
Yeah, and that's the beauty. Find out what works for you. Nobody can tell you how you can live your life, how it's supposed to be, how who you're supposed to be. Find out who you are. But I
Exactly.
love everybody. I'm gonna have to sign off because we did start late. And thank
Yeah.
you for
Thank you so
joining
much.
us. And have a beautiful existence today and going forward.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Kusal at
Bye.
Koos is Key. Check out our links and subscribe if you haven't. We appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.